Hello, Gareth here, and it is very cold today, about 4 degrees. That's cold for me. Celsius, not Fahrenheit. And anyway, today we're going to paint a snow scene, and there's a lot of interesting things in this snow scene that I think you're going to enjoy learning about. I've got a dry voice as well. In Japan, in winter time, it becomes very dry and my voice isn't good normally anyway. So before I ramble on, let's get on with the painting. And the first thing we're going to do is a really soft winter sky. And we're going to do a technique where we tilt the paper and have the paint running down. And is it difficult? It's kind of difficult. I will try to keep it as simple as possible, but it is a lot of fun. So focus on the fun. Okay, let's begin. Okay, I'm all set up and ready to go. And I've got my reference painting here. And this is the first thing we're going to do, is this very soft sky. And it really does look beautiful. And it's not that difficult, I think. Tell me in the comments what you think. So anyway, I've prepared my materials. It's very important. If you're right-handed, have all the things you need on the right-hand side. Don't have some things on the left and some things on the right, because it's going to make it difficult for you. So here we go. I'm using a flat brush, and actually I need a bigger one, this one. And the first thing I'm going to do is wet the paper. So I don't use a super soaking wet brush. I'll dab that a little. And I'm going down to the horizon about here. And I forgot to add my clips. So I'm going to add my clips now. And the horizon is about here. Okay. And now we're ready to begin. So I'm going to use this brush and some yellow ochre. Quite a watery mix. And begin here. So with your light colours, you want to be careful not to get them dirty. You can see it's a little bit dirty here in my palette, so I have to be very careful about that, because you really want these light colours to be pure. And then tilting it, and it will run down. Okay, then this is cerulean. Do you say cerulean? I don't know how you pronounce it. Anyway, this colour and a touch of red, just a touch. It's very difficult to get just a touch of red. Okay, this needs to be quite watery. And we're going to run this down around the yellow. And a little bit here. So the most important thing is just enjoy this. It really is a lot of fun. We're going into the yellow a little bit there, and the water's collecting at the bottom, so if it becomes too much it will run down into the dry area, which we don't want. So dab my brush and absorb that, take it up. Okay, let's do a little bit more yellow ochre. Clean my brush. A little bit thicker. And here we go. Bit there, bit there. Then let's go thicker with this mix. The cerulean blue and alizarin crimson. So here and a bit here and a bit here. So I shouldn't be brushing down. I wasn't doing it correctly then. I should be letting the paint run by itself. Now, if your paper is dry down here, it's not going to run. So you might have to re-wet it again. But hopefully not. And I might do this. So now I'm mixing it in with some darker paint I've already got. Basically this is something like cerulean blue, alizarin crimson, and a touch of yellow ochre. I tried to get the yellow ochre from the side here because I don't want to make it all dirty for when I next need to use it. Like I said, if it gets dirty, your light colours, then it's not good, right? And they very easily get dirty. Whereas your stronger colours, like your reds and your blues, even though you've got bits of other paint in there, like yellow ochre, it won't really affect the overall colour so much. Okay, here we go with a much darker colour. It's not running down, so I need to tilt it more. And that's okay if it's not running down too much, because now we can start to get a little bit of maybe control over this. Not a lot, but a little. And that looks lovely. Now, what you have to be careful of is you don't get so into it that you just end up painting everything. We really have to leave these other areas alone as much as possible. Although I will do a little bit more around here, but very carefully. Very carefully. Just a little bit of greying off all that yellow. Now, it's not exactly a natural sky, but I like it. And is that enough? Maybe that's enough. It looks a bit like that aurora. Is that how you pronounce it? But it looks a bit like that. So dab my brush, and then let's soak up this accumulation of paint and water at the bottom. Yeah, I think this looks really beautiful. So final thing is get some tissue, fold, 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 and then we're going to do the sun. Doesn't have to be a perfect circle. Oh, that looks nice. So let's leave that now to dry. One more thing we could do is at the bottom here, this colour, maybe it's all three colours, the cerulean blue, the alizarin crimson and the yellow ochre. We can do maybe just a few lines like this. Yeah, and there we go. Let's leave that to dry. Now we're going to do the snow, and we want soft effect. So what we do to get that is get your flat brush, some water, dab, 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 and then we wet this area. So we're basically doing wet in wet technique. Oh, and this is an important thing. We've got some paint here that I don't want. What we can do is basically erase that. So this brush, the hairs on this brush are quite tough, bristly, and so it helps a lot to erase paint, to use a brush with bristly hairs. But even soft hairs are okay, but then you'll need a tissue after you've wet the area to remove the paint. So that alone is good enough, but if we get some tissue, it will probably remove even more. And we can do that again and again until we remove most of the paint. But that's good enough. I'm happy with that. I'll just wet this again, because it can dry out pretty quickly sometimes. So it's not soaking wet, but it's not barely moist. It's in between. Then I need another flat brush, but a bit smaller. And we're going to do cerulean blue, a touch of red. This is really difficult because sometimes I pick up too much. And maybe this is too watery. I don't know if you can hear the crows outside. The crows in Japan are very big and quite They're like gangsters. They're quite intimidating creatures and noisy. So this is a bit thicker, and just to get rid of a bit more moisture, I dab it on the rag. So using your rag is very important. I noticed that a lot of beginner students don't use their rag enough. It's really, really important. So I've done this a bit too early, and the way you can see that it's too early is you get this like hairy effect. Shall we call that a hairy effect? Can you see we've got the thin lines of paint going up? So I should have waited a bit longer. Of course, when you're doing a video, it's a bit of a problem because nobody wants to wait there looking at a piece of wet paper for a minute or two. So if I dab this and dry it off a bit, maybe that will help. So don't get upset if you have trouble with this. One of the hardest things in watercolor painting is this balance between the light ratio of paint to water in your mixers and the moisture of the paper and using your rag. But over time, you'll just develop an instinct for it, but it just takes time. So be patient with that if you can. You will get there. I'm going to do one more there and one more here. Just keep it very simple. And then I'm going to do a little bit of a darker area within that. Wow, doesn't that look beautiful? I think that looks fantastic. I was lucky there. You can see how the red, I think it's the red, has separated from the blue perhaps. And it gives it a lovely, well, it's just a lovely effect. Okay. So here's a darker mix. This is just 3 colours. It's my cerulean blue, alizarin crimson and yellow ochre. I don't use that many different colours, and that's very useful because it makes mixing much simpler, but also it unifies the painting because you haven't got too many different colours on the paper which are all fighting with one another. That's too moist, so dab it on the rag. Very important. Look at these little details, like I'm dabbing both sides. So little details like that are very important for improving your watercolor painting ability, whatever, skills. Okay. So we've got some really lovely soft effects here. This is quite fun to do. Okay, that will do. Let's leave that to dry. Okay, I'm looking at this and I think I used too much red. So if we look at this one, the blue is slightly different. I think it's because it's mostly just blue and almost no red. In fact, maybe there's no red in the first colour or first mix. And then in this slightly darker mix, maybe there's a touch of red there. So what I'm going to do is just basically erase this. I'm not sure how well this will work, but let's have a go. So get this brush and carefully wet all of this. And then, as you can see, it's beginning to disappear. Now, an important point here is the quality of your paper. Now, it's okay to use cheap watercolor paper, especially as a beginner, for just practicing and improving. However, there are some problems with it, and one of the problems is if you ever want to erase something or scrub the surface, you're only going to be able to do that probably with good quality paper, which is thicker and can handle much harsher treatment. Now, I don't need to remove completely the paint here. So I'm going to let that dry now and then have another go. So that's one of the things you can do with good quality paper. You can sometimes wipe off the paint completely, brush it up, erase it, slightly scrub it off. Thicker paper, more expensive watercolor paper will handle that kind of rough treatment. Okay, let's leave this to dry. This has now dried, and I'm going to wet it again. And redo it. So I'm going to use my pointed oval. In some ways that's not too bad, what's left over from before, but it's a little bit too faint. So this time maybe I'm going to use just cerulean blue. I think that's much better than before. And then this one. That's good. Now I'm going to go a bit darker. So cerulean blue and a touch of this purple colour. It's just alizarin crimson and some blue. There might be a touch of yellow ochre in there. Okay, here we go. And a little bit here. and take this clip off. And there we go, finished. So next I'm going to do this distant mountain. Same colours. Watery mix, which makes it look fainter. It's so noisy here, it's unbelievable. That looks pretty good. Now I need to keep this simple. Ooh. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just use a little bit of dark paint down here, darken that a bit. Okay, and now let's leave this to dry. So it has dried and it's looking nice. There's a lovely softness to the painting that I'm really happy about. But I'm going to make it even softer by going over the mountain with a wet brush, and I think I'll use this one. It's a small hake, but basically just a flat brush. Actually not really a hake, just a flat brush. So first of all, let's wet it. Then dry it, and here we go. You have to be careful that you might be picking up blue paint here onto the brush. So now and again, you need to clean your brush. and we can make some areas fainter than others. So this kind of scrubbing technique, you really need good quality watercolor paper, which is thick, to do this. Yep, okay, let's leave that to dry. Now it has dried and we're ready to do the snow-covered fir tree. So for this, I'm going to use my liner brush and get dark blue. This is phthalo blue. Ultramarine blue is also okay. Get some yellow ochre. And a touch of red. More yellow ochre. And more. So blue and yellow give you the green colour, but it's too much of a bright green, so we add the red to grey it off, make it look a bit more like a real fir green colour. Although some fir trees are a colourful light green colour, right? I think. So here we go. So maybe about here, and start here and work my way down. So at the top, I just do dashes. With a liner brush, you've got to be careful about drops of water along the stem. So it's a good idea just to do this, because if it runs down into your mix on the paper, it's not good. So just begin with a few lines like that, and then we get bigger. That's a bit too watery. And here. And the trunk gets thicker. So like this. The whole family's coughing, so I'm going to be next. Okay. So sometimes I do a flicky effect, just flick the brush, but if it's really watery then you're not going to get a nice effect. So it has to be not too wet, the brush. Okay, I think that will do. Maybe one more bit there. Okay. And then I don't really want this bit because it's going to be covered in snow. Oh dear, there you go. That's what I mean about the drip of water on the brush. Runs down into the mix on the paper, but not too bad. So now get our cerulean blue, add some water to it, dab dab dab, very important. There's water. And then just do this. So you don't want to get the brush too much into the green paint yet, because it will become dirty. You want a really nice clear blue. If you could see there, it got a little dirty. If it does get dirty, then just wipe it on your rag. At the moment it doesn't look very natural, but as we begin to blend it in, it will look better, I think. Okay. Bit too much snow there, goodness me, but can't be helped. Can't be helped. In Japanese, can't be helped. Shogunai. Shogunai. That's what they say. I live in such a noisy place. Okay, we're getting there. And then I'm going to put some touches of blue in the dark green area. And how does that look? I'm standing up in order to get a better view. Yep. And I think here I might just, you can use your tissue like an eraser. Okay. Let's leave that to dry. Now it has dried and we're going to do the grass. So this is going to be a dark green colour, so I can use this. Maybe add a touch of yellow ochre. And if possible, I want to spread the hairs on the brush. And then here, just a few, very few blades of grass. The fewer the better. And that will do. So let's leave that to dry. It's looking fairly nice. Now I'm going to do the figure and the dog. So I think about where to put them. So maybe about here and about this high, from here to here. So I can use this mix, but I don't want a green figure, so I'll add a bit more red. So I'm using my other painting as a reference here. And yeah, about there. I begin with the head. Then the shoulders. And I want this figure leaning forwards. It's a bit more dynamic, a bit more interesting. And then the legs trudging through the snow. So at the end, a little bit of dry brush, which is nice. The hand is always a little bit difficult, or the hands. I think that's good enough. I'll give him a stick. And there's his other arm. I hope that's not too long. And the shoulder disappeared, so give him a shoulder again. His head is quite big, so I'll just try and make the shoulders higher. Kind of hide that. So I think that's pretty good. And I like that dynamic tilt to the figure. It gives it more of a feeling of motion. Here's the dog. I begin with the tail. I do too many paintings of dogs with the tail going straight up like that, so I need to change that. Okay. I think that's pretty good. And then the footprints. So I'll use this blue with a touch of red. And then the same with the dog. I'm not sure if you could even see these footprints, but there you go. Yeah, we've got our figure and our dog. So I think I might add some yellow ochre to his coat. Clean this up a bit. Okay, here we go. Stronger. And then just water maybe, well, a bit of this dark paint, and then blend it in. It's a bit too wet. So dab it on the rag and remove some excess water. And a bit darker here. Okay, and then I think it's time to let that dry. I might use a little bit of yellow ochre on the dog. Let's add a touch of red, make it a little bit brown. Bit different to the coat. Okay. So let's leave that to dry. Looking pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to do shadows. So pull up my stool, get my liner brush, and I'm going to use the light blue and a touch of the alizarin crimson. Bit more water. Too much water, so a bit more paint, then dab it here. So the light's coming down here, so there's going to be a shadow about here. A little bit tricky because his legs are bent. And then this one comes directly down. And it's a bit too watery, so I'll dry my brush and soak up some of this excess paint. That looks pretty nice. There's a nice crisp feeling. And then this tree. So it's going to come about this kind of angle, I think. And then maybe the top is about here. That's a bit too much. So erase. If you get in quickly with a tissue, you can erase almost everything. So that's pretty good. Once again, dry the brush off. And pick up some of the excess moisture. Then I'm going to do some birds. I'll use this dark mix, not too much water, just a little, because I want to keep it thick. And wiping, very important. And then let's do a few birds. Wow, the sky is really good. Now, I don't know why, but that's very, very faint. That's nice. Just a few strokes. Normally I do a thin one and a fat one like that. This is also a good way of covering up any spots or marks that you don't like. Okay, maybe one more and finished. Now they might be a bit too big compared to this figure, but still looks pretty good. So let's leave that to dry. Okay, I think it's dried, and now the final thing, I think, I just realized I forgot to do shadows on these blades of grass. So I'll do that now. Shadow within a shadow. I like that. Okay. And then the final bit is just some highlights with white paint. Now, I do tend to go a bit crazy when I get the white paint out. I don't know why, but I love to use white paint. And like I said with this brush, always watch out for the drops of water along the stem. You'll know what I mean, because you'll get one of those drops run down onto your paint and you'll get a big splodge. So I want to get this nice and thin, and it's pretty thick. And this is going to go around the figure. It's all very light around the figure, so this isn't going to stick out or pop out too much, but maybe a little. And if there's anybody still watching, I want to say thank you. And if you could like and comment, that would be wonderful. And I'm also going to do, I've got to do the dog. And then I'm also going to do this tree. Just a touch of white, pure white. Oh, that got a lot thicker than I intended, but maybe it's working. Then again, maybe too much. So get in there quickly and do that again. And this one, and here. There we go. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay. So, yep. So that's it, finished. And I guess I should do my signature. The names. Bond, no. Gareth Naylor, actually. GN. License to paint. Actually, I don't have a license to paint. GN. There we go. That's quite nice. So the final thing, which I strongly recommend, is that you have a look at your painting. I know sometimes that can be painful, but try to have a look and think about how you feel about it, and then look at the individual parts and just assess. Assess is maybe, yeah, well, just try to assess how well it worked. So judge, I prefer that word. So overall, I'm very happy with this painting. I think it's got a lovely softness, brightness, crispness. Yeah, I think it turned out very good. There's a lovely atmosphere to it. So looking at each individual element then. So the sky, I know the sky's a bit over the top and not exactly natural, but I think it works and I like it a lot. Then the mountain, I think, is good. It looks faint, it looks distant, and it looks like a real mountain. Then these shadows in the snow, I think they work well. These blades of grass are really good. They're almost too good perhaps, but I like them. then the tree I think is pretty good, and the grass is very good. Maybe it's too green. Maybe it should be more of a browny colour, winter grass, and these two. But I like very much the way I've done them with the brush. I think they look good. And this fir tree I think is pretty good, but I'm slightly unhappy with it. I think it could be a little bit better. It's definitely passable, but I think it could be a little bit better. But I'm fairly happy with it. The birds are okay, but they're a little bit too big compared to the figure, but they're still okay. And the figure, I'm delighted with the figure and the shadows. And the dog is okay, but that tail is just a bit too upright. So I think next time I might do a tail that's kind of hanging down and swinging to the left or whatever. Yeah, and that might be a bit better, but it's still okay. So there you go. There's my critique, and yeah, I'm very happy with this painting. So I hope you have a go, and the most important thing is to just have a good time. So I'll be back hopefully soon with a new lesson. Bye for now.